honourable member for New Westminster Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak in support of today's NDP motion. The motion before us is about misuse of taxpayers' dollars. It seems the Prime Minister and his friends have been racking up flights on government Challenger aircraft as if these jets are their own personal planes. Access to information documents reveal the Prime Minister is increasingly using Challenger jets not only for his own family's travel but for personal friends and the Conservative Party's fundraisers. Furthermore, they've changed the rules so that they only have to reimburse taxpayers on an amount equivalent to economy-class airfare. Mr. Speaker, those jets cost nearly $4,000 an hour to fly. Yet the Conservatives, after changing the rules in their favour, only reimburse taxpayers an average of $260 a flight. Wow. No wonder they are using these jets so frequently for personal and partisan reasons. They get to travel like rock stars, but pay seat sale rates. When the average Canadian is looking to book a flight, they tend to go online, compare prices and schedules, then choose the best deal. They wait for seats to go on sale because they have a budget to worry about. But not these Conservatives. They've devised quite the scheme to get taxpayers to subsidize their non-government related travel. iPolitics, through an access to information request and documents, found that the Conservative Party has reimbursed the Department of National Defence 17 times for a total cost of over $37,000. But the actual cost of these flights in question is about $118,000. Let's not forget about taxpayers were also on the hook last year for about $50,000 in terms of a paint job for one of these jets after the Conservatives decided to paint it Conservative colours. Mr. Speaker, I think I speak on behalf of a majority of British Columbians when I say that this Conservative Party is unrecognizable from the party that people once hoped that would come to Ottawa to clean up the Liberal legacy of corruption and entitlement. So, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives said they would come to Ottawa to make change, but instead Ottawa has changed them. I have three examples that I'd like to illustrate this point with. First, on the Senate. So when we talk about appointments, the Conservatives have promised not to nominate new senators, but then went ahead and appointed 59 of their closest friends, including Pamela Wallin, Mike Duffy, and Patrick Brazeau. The Senate is under investigation. Senate expense scandals showed a complete disregard for ethics and transparency. The NDP says it's time to roll up that red carpet, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives' record on the Senate shows they're no different from the Liberals when it comes to a sense of entitlement. Second, Conservatives' abuse of Parliament, specifically focusing on time allocation. The Conservatives have shut down debate more than 50 times over the past 2 years, more than any other government in Canadian history. When we look at committees, there's a constant use of in-camera proceedings, shutting Canadians out of the proceedings. That severely restricts studies, and they also handpick pro-government witnesses. When it comes to contempt, the 2011 election was triggered after the Conservatives were found to be in contempt of Parliament for misleading parliamentarians and refusing to provide key details of proposed bills and their cost estimates. The Conservatives' record of abusing Parliament as a democratic institution shows they are no different from the Liberals when it comes to transparency and accountability. Third, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives' Unfair Elections Act. Number one, it removes powers from the Chief Electoral Officer, who will be stripped of investigative powers, and it removes the CEO's powers to engage in public education. Number two, makes voting much, much harder for vulnerable Canadians. It ends the practice of vouching, and voter ID cards are no longer accepted to confirm identification. And number three, changes political financing rules in the Conservatives' favour. It increases allowable levels for individuals to contribute from $1,200 to $1,500, and it gives an advantage to wealthy Canadians by allowing...
Order. The Honourable Minister of State for Foreign Affairs is rising on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I just have to recheck. What is the debate about? I thought we did the elections debate yesterday. I think if we're on the debate that I thought we were on, I think he's being very irrelevant.
Thank the Honourable Minister of State for her intervention. Members, of course, know that there are rules in respect to relevance to the question that's in front of the House. I do see, and I know that there have been points raised on this matter earlier in the day during this debate. I recognize that the member is about halfway into his time, and I'm sure that he will be presenting arguments that bring his commentary around to the question that's before the House. It's always, of course, instructive to all honourable members to be aware that while they have great liberty to provide arguments around the question that's in front, we always encourage them, of course, to make that relevant either in the early part of their remarks or certainly towards the end of the remarks so that it will be understood how it is that their particular arguments all connect together. The Honourable Member for New Westminster Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was saying, I did, I think, link the topic of ethics. I also talked about transparency and accountability. And I'm also going to finish about priorities in terms of where we should be spending the money that is being wasted by this government. Hopefully, the member is paying attention to this intervention and does make the link to my points, because I have made a lot of, or I've spent a lot of time in preparing my comments, and I hope they do take note. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, this does give an advantage to wealthy Canadians to contribute up to $5,000, or candidates, I should say, up to $5,000 of their own to their own campaign and $25,000 of their own leadership campaign. It exempts fundraising calls being made by elections from counting as electoral expenses. Mr. Speaker, the NDP has fundamental concerns with this bill, and we join with journalists, academics, and other Canadians speaking up for democracy, and they are now saying if it's not amended, that we should kill this bill. When it comes to improving our democracy, Canadians cannot rely on the Conservative Party. Their record is just one scandal after another. Once again, they cannot be trusted. So, Mr. Speaker, what should we be talking about? What should we be focused on in terms of spending? When it comes to transparency and accountability, Canadians deserve better leadership than what this Conservative government has been offering. I'd like to expand on what this means. Last month, I held my annual series of town hall meetings as part of my community consultations. I asked constituents to rank by importance a variety of public policy issues and economic concerns. As is the case in every year I've held these, health care was the highest ranked issue. Since coming to power, the government has made little to no progress on reducing wait times, increasing home care, ensuring better access to primary care, or implementing a cost-saving pharmacare plan. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the 2004 Health Care Accord officially expired with no new accord to replace it. Instead of negotiating a new deal, the Conservatives unilaterally imposed a new funding formula on the provinces and have walked away from the commitments to setting standards on wait times, home care, and prescription drugs. This government's record on health care is clear. They are failing to show leadership on this crucial file, and they are opening the door to increased disparities across our country. As official opposition, the NDP is listening to Canadians and is holding this government to account for their failed record on health care. Today we are holding them to account for their abuse of taxpayers' money and the culture of corruption and entitlement that seems to have overtaken the leadership of this Conservative Party. The public purse is out $118,000 because this government has been treating government jets as their personal and partisan taxis. $118,000 equals old age security for 19 seniors, GIS allowance for 20 seniors, average annual pension for 5 retired veterans. The Conservative government has done little to address the challenges facing Canada's aging population or providing adequate services to our Canadian veterans, and I find this appalling, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they've made it harder for seniors to retire with dignity. OAS changes have mean while many are forced to work an additional 2 years before they're allowed to retire. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable. We need change. The NDP is focused on change, and we will bring that change in 2015. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before we go to questions and comments, I see the honourable New Westminster Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member's comments and observation of my speech and my intervention. And I was trying to make relevant what some of the priorities I think are that we could be looking at use of those dollars, and that Canadians want to see those better use of taxpayers' dollars. In fact, to add to that list that I have, Mr. Speaker, the truth is this government doesn't care about the growing inequality in our country. They don't care that childcare is wildly unaffordable, or that poverty among seniors is on the rise, or that British Columbia has the highest child poverty rate in the country. In fact, they don't even think it's their responsibility to feed their neighbor's child. Mr. Speaker, that they simply don't care. For them, it's business as usual, whether it's bringing their friends on Challenger jets and trying to find loopholes to pay ways that are not fair, that what the average Canadian would not get that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, that's what I'm trying to point out to this House, that is not what we want to see. We want to change that. The NDP is bringing forward motions that address this kind of waste and inequity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question commentaire.